Well, good morning. I'm so glad you all are here this morning. I kind of thought later in the morning that you all would be emptied out and on your way to do fun things on a Friday. So thank you for staying for this. It makes it a lot better for me when I've got a room to talk to. And it's wonderful to be with you all. I was with you earlier this year. I'd just gotten in office and I was telling you what I wanted to do. And now I'm here in front of you after about 10 months. So I can tell you about some things that we've done and some things we're going to do and just kind of hear from you a little bit today as well. I just saw a moment ago that my deputy state auditor, Shauna Kraus, just walked in. So I want her to raise her hand so that you all know who she is, because I think it's important for you to know the people that I've brought on this team to be partners with you in the work that we do. So Shauna, I know you just wave, but wave real big for me. Very good. She's a tremendous talent. I was so excited to hire her. She came with us from Deloitte, excellent CPA. And I've been really intentional about the staff that I brought on. I've got two other people in the room. Jockey, some of you know Jockey Nagesi Quinn. He's the Director of Constituent Services, because I wanted somebody that you could always call and talk to get a hold of whoever you need to, whether it's me or Shauna or somebody else. I wanted a designated person to be your liaison for my office. I thought that was something that we could improve upon because I heard a lot of things from you all when I was on the campaign trails. And I heard about some positive things, some negative things, some frustrations, some ways to improve. And I thought one thing I could do would be to have somebody who is available to you. Your point person, your go-to person. Of course, I'm always available to you. You have elected me. You brought me here. So many of us are good friends. But I also wanted somebody else that you could get to when you need to get other people in the office. So Jockey's here. And then I've also got Matt Fry, who is doing a few different things right now. He is the director of the state part of our auditing, the one that does mostly the executive branch, but he's also doing some policy work. So he's here because he's learning from you all things that we need to be thinking about this next legislative session. So I've got those three staffers right here. They're great for you to know. I want you to be aware of who I've put in place to assist you. And you have heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again because I want you to know my vision for this office, my commitment for the direction we should go in. And it's formed by a number of different things. It's formed a lot by conversations that we had last year. And I really grew to understand that this office is supposed to be a partnership office. I was a prosecutor before I was state treasurer. And you think about this office as waste, fraud, and abuse, catching waste, fraud, and abuse. And this office does do that. There is that element of looking out for fraud and abuse. That's a function of this office, and that's a good part of this office. But most situations are not about fraud and abuse. I know so many of you well now over the years, and many of you are people who care so deeply about doing great work for your counties. And I'm so proud of you and the way you make Kentucky better. And most of the time, what we do with you is a partnership. It's making government work better, more efficient, more transparent. We do this together. And for most situations, we're not looking for a finding. That's not a win for us. What we want is to make your offices the best they can be. We want to identify things and help you serve the way that you want to. What's your goal? To be the best you can be in your particular roles. So that is the primary function of what we're doing is efficiency, good government. That's what we want to do. That's where our partnership comes in. We do that kind of thing together. And this is formed a lot by, and I've told you this, some of you this before, so if you heard this before, bear with me, just stick with it for a second. I remember when I was a kid going trick-or-treating when I was, middle school age, and I had several friends that went with me because we were at that point where mom and dad would let us do it by ourselves. And I remember I had one friend, I was a vampire that year, but I had one friend who came dressed up in a suit and a red tie, and he had a briefcase. And I was like, what are you? And I remember he had written the letters IRS on his briefcase. And he would go up to houses and he would say, audit or treat. And I remember people would laugh and they'd say, that's the scariest thing I could think of. And at the age of whatever, in middle school, it was totally beyond me. I didn't get it at all. But I picked up that there was something behind that people were afraid of being audited. And I kind of held on to that my whole life. I realized that was a very clever Halloween costume. But that's how people feel. They're afraid of being audited. And in some respect, there's a little bit of a healthy fear because you want to do what's right? You want to make sure you're doing the right thing. But what I want for you all, you are elected, you have your staff. I want us to primarily think about we're doing this together. We're making government good. We're making it efficient. And so I remember that story with my friend Nathaniel, and then I remember my husband, who some of you know, he was chief of staff of the Transportation Cabinet under Bevin, and he served under Fletcher for a while during that season as well. And I remember him telling me one of the best branches in the transportation cabinet, one of the best areas, was the auditing staff. And they just had great community and they really got on well. And he went to one of their Christmas parties or something like that, and they gave him a gift, and it was a mug, which he still has, and it said, "I heart auditing." And they all loved it because nobody really feels that way about auditing. And, I don't know that you ever are going to feel like you love auditing. You're probably not. But I would like you to be as close to that because you know that our goal is your goal, to make government good, make it efficient, make it what it should be, what your goal is, what the people have put you there to do, what the people have put me there to do. And we all are pulling and rowing in the same direction. So that's the overarching goal, and I've told my staff that. They know that's my vision for this role. And, there is that making sure that people are doing things right. Sometimes people don't. You don't want that either. If somebody is doing something wrong, you want that called out and fixed because you don't want that to disparage you and discredit you in the work that you're doing. But our primary focus is good, efficient government, help you, partner with you, get this done the right way. And like I said, I've told my staff there, Shauna's been great at rowing in the right direction with me on that. We all share that vision and we care about it and we want to do that right. We've made a few internal changes to assist with that too. I have realized over time that sometimes things are put in auditing reports that the public doesn't always understand. Segregation of duties. That's a very common thing. It's not a super big deal. It's something we point out that needs to be fixed, and we work together to try and figure out how to do that. But the public doesn't always understand what that is. So we have figured out when we do press releases, it used to be in prior administrations, some of them, they would say, okay, this county's got 5 findings. We know it's all segregation of duties, so it's not like it's a big deal. But the public doesn't understand that. They think, oh my goodness, whatever county has 5 findings, this must be horrible. So we have decided that when we do a press release, we say, hey, the audit's done, people can see it, here's a link. Good transparency, people need to know what's out there, but we don't also include 5 findings because that's sometimes a little bit confusing to people. It can actually be almost deceitful to people because they think, oh no, there's something really terribly wrong. So we've tried to adjust. We want it to be reflective of what's actually going on, and that's something we're careful about. If you haven't done something that really warrants looking bad, we don't want you to look bad. And we've had a lot of internal discussions about this, figuring out what's the most honest, what's the most accurate, what's helped the public know what's going on. And that's what you want. You want the public to know what's going on in your offices. That's good transparency. So we've changed how we do press releases in a lot of ways. We've changed the language of reports. You probably don't know this, but we've been careful that what is said actually reflects what's going on. So I've said sometimes, you know what, that sounds kind of harsh. That's too harsh. That doesn't fit what's actually going on. So we've adjusted that in our office, and that's an ongoing effort to make sure it's done right, but we've got a whole team of people that are reviewing it and making sure this reflects what's really going on. It's not too extreme. It's the right thing. When it comes to recommendations, if we recommend it to go to DLG or the AG's office or something like that, it's got to actually be warranted. It has to be the right thing to do. And we've had a lot of internal discussions. Don't jump the gun. Because there's sometimes an effort to, hey, if we refer this to the AG's office, it looks super aggressive and we've done the right thing. The question is it the right thing? Is that the right thing to do? And when it is, you do it and you make sure it's handled the correct way. But if it's not warranted, then we make sure that it reflects what's actually going on. So those are some things that we have worked on internally in the office. You probably have no idea that it's happened, but those are things that we have changed because I think it's the most responsible way to handle this office. And I think it reflects the work that you're actually doing. So those are things that we've changed, and I look forward to more conversations with you to figure out how do we make this the best office that it can be, how do we make your offices the best they can be. And those are just some real quick things we've talked about. One thing that I've heard many times from you all is costs of audits, and we're doing everything we can to figure out that it's not too costly, because I am mindful of the money that is coming from taxpayers to pay for audits. And we've had lots of discussions about that, making sure it's not too much. One thing that I learned early on is that we can't forgive debt. There are laws that don't allow us to forgive debt. And I actually, kind of struggled with that at first because, there's some counties that have been hit by tornadoes or hit by floods, and they need that money to help people repair things. So we know this. We know that what the law says, you can't forgive debt. So we are being very careful at the front end. Don't cost more hours than what it really needs. And we're getting better and better, and Shauna's working harder and harder at making sure that if we're doing it, it's warranted, it's right, it's the right amount of hours. You'll be happy to know we've done a real deep dive on what the cost is, and right now it's $65 an hour. and we reviewed all the CPAs that we work with, and they go from $150 to $400 an hour. So we are the cheapest way that it can be done. Sometimes it ends up costing a lot because there's a lot of hours, and that's what we've identified. That's an issue. We want to make sure we're using it the right amount of hours. If we are doing the work for you, it's because it is warranted, it is right, and it needs to be done. So I want you to have confidence. We are taking this seriously. I heard you, and we're doing what we can to make sure this is not costing too much, because I believe in those taxpayer dollars having the right thing. It is a good cost to pay for audits. It's good to do things like that, but you want it to be commensurate. You want it to be the right amount. So we're taking these things seriously. We have heard you. We are working on it. And we are going to continue to make this the best office that it can be. Like I said, I've got a team that I'm so proud of. They care about this the same way I do. They care about you. I really wanted some of my team to be here because I want them to know you like I know you. Not just foot soldiers that are out there that interact with you here and there. I want them to know who you are because it informs the way I lead this office, because I know so many of you. I've worked with you as state treasurer. Some of you are from areas that I crisscross. I have gotten to respect you and the people that have put you there, and that's a key part of what guides this office and the work that we're doing. All right, that's a real quick rundown of what we've done the last few months to be reflective of things that I've learned and the direction I want to go. I do want to tell you a few things that are upcoming. We always have big audits. We have some things that have happened. Some of you may remember the DJJ, the audit that was released earlier this year, and it identified absolutely horrendous things happening in the Department of Juvenile Justice, absolutely horrible situations happening to juveniles that are in those detention centers, actually abusive type situations with kids being tasered at excessive amounts, kids being put in isolation rooms in ways that were entirely inappropriate, medicine not being given to kids, education not being given to kids, kids being put in a room and given an iPad and like, this is your school, just really, really dropping the ball in horrible ways as a society that needed to be addressed. That came from our work. We released that earlier this year, and that has triggered a federal investigation, and that is ongoing right now. So, you want to do good work, you want to find things that are wrong, and you want them to be fixed. This is one of those things that is in the process right now being fixed. The federal folks have stepped in there to address this, and it's an example of doing your work well, identifying a problem, and then the steps being taken to get those things addressed. Some things that you may have heard about is we had a big Elkhorn City release, and so for those of you who are in the Pike County area, I think you were relieved to finally get that over with and done. It was something that I inherited, and we were able to finish out, and questions got answered, and a right direction is in place for where that city's going to go, which is a big deal for that area. And today we just released the Camp Dick Fire and Rescue, another special one that's out there. So these are some little things that you may have been aware of, some big things that you may be aware of that have happened from our office. And then one thing in particular I want to touch on just a little bit, because there's a bit of an insider baseball that happens when you come here. Some of you may have heard a little bit of some news coverage involving the Office of the Ombudsman. It used to be attached to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. You may have read about it a little while ago. It was supposed to be transferred fully over to our office on July 1. The Office of the Ombudsman for CHFS deals with Medicaid, deals with foster care, SNAP benefits, a lot of things that you think of that deal with vulnerable members of your community. The Ombudsman is very similar to an auditor, was over at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, is supposed to hold that cabinet accountable and investigate when that needed to be done. And the General Assembly moved it over to our office, said it was a better fit to be over here, has a little more independence. It works very similar to an auditor. It's no longer a part of that cabinet, so that way it doesn't actually work for the secretary. It was, I think, a smart and intelligent change to move it over to us. We ended up with a bit of a snag when we first got it sent over, because one particular piece of that office was not transferred over, and at the time it was the iTwist access. I'm not trying to bore you. This is actually something that's good for you to know. So I'm going to give you this full background. I know it sounds a little detailed, but I want you to know what this is because it's going to be helpful for you and your constituents. That database was the database for foster care issues, child abuse issues, adult abuse, like if you're in a senior citizen home or something like that. They're all on iTwist. And that was supposed to be transferred to us when that office was transferred over. And the folks over at CHFS told us, here's your personnel, here's your papers and pens, but we're not giving you access to iTwist. And it ended up being a battle back and forth for a while, because you can't do the job of the ombudsman. You can't look into foster care and abuse unless you have access to the database. It's the essential part of doing that work. We went back and forth for a while, ended up being a lawsuit, which we did sue to get access to that. And it was a pretty quick, I think, right answer, and then we reached a resolution in about 3 weeks. We now have access to, maybe about a month, we now have access to iTwist, so that office is fully functioning in our office, the Ombudsman's office. I tell you this because having been a lawyer in Floyd County, I know how people come up to you and say, hey, I've got an issue here, I've got an issue there. Many of them involve the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. You now have an access point to refer them to. You can refer them to the Ombudsman office. John Great is the Ombudsman underneath me. He's the person I hired to serve as the Ombud, and there's a whole team of people that now are ready to help with those kinds of questions. I know these things come up because I've been at the county level, and I know how those questions arise. So that's something that's good for you to know. There's a couple of issues that have resulted from that we're now working on. The Auditor's office is working on a kinship care issue, which is about relatives who are taking care of kids who otherwise would be foster kids, and access to those dollars. And the Auditor's office there's a dispute right now about whether those dollars exist in the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And the Auditor's office is reviewing that to determine if there is money available and how much is it available and can that issue be resolved. So that's an ongoing issue right now involving this similar demographic. And then the Ombud's office is also working on finding out what's going on with children who've been placed, foster children who've been placed in office buildings, just to stay sometimes for weeks on end instead of putting them in a foster home. So the Ombud's office right now is reviewing that. I know some of you remember reading about that in the news a couple of years ago, and it's an ongoing issue, and the Ombudsman office is dealing with that. I'm careful to talk as I talk about it because a lot of that is confidential information, but some of it has been made public. So these are children as young as 2 years old who are sleeping in office buildings, overnight. Sometimes it's one night, but sometimes it's multiple nights, sometimes multiple weeks. So that's something the Ombudsman's office is dealing right now. And if you have people that come up to you and say, hey, I've heard about this, I know this is happening, you have a contact point. That's the Ombud. But some issues are Auditor's office. You can reach out to us and we can direct to where it goes. But those are good things for you to know because these impact vulnerable people in your communities, people who come to you, people who ask you for help. So this is helpful right now. You know where to go to, what to do with these kinds of questions, what to address. All right, what are some other big picture items coming up for the Auditor's office? A really big one that sounds like it's just for Louisville, but it is for the whole state, is the JCPS audit. We're working on that right now, and it's the first time it's been done in about a decade, and it is a thorough review of the Jefferson County school system. It's not just a financial audit, it's an audit of how safe is the school? Are the buses working right? How much money is going into the classroom and how much is going to the administration? Looking at how kids are performing. So it is a massive undertaking. It's actually going to be a 2-year undertaking because I'm hopeful this is going to be the gold standard to identify things that are happening there so that way other school districts all around the Commonwealth can see, okay, are we doing this the right way? Are we doing this the wrong way? Can we improve? So it sounds like it's just for Louisville. It's not just for Louisville. This is the largest school district in the Commonwealth, and you get this right, you find out what's going on here, and it trickles down and is an example and a standard for the rest of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So I think it's going to be a big deal for students, for kids, and for parents all over the state. Another issue that's similar is we're also doing a giant, massive, thorough audit of the Kentucky Department of Education. That one is a 1-year audit. It's going to be done next summer. And that reviews just about everything you can think of. But one of the triggers for that is one of the things we were concerned about, and it's been confirmed, because the KDE just released this themselves, is that less than half of Kentucky's students right now are proficient in any of the major topics, math, English, social studies, science, any of those issues. All of those are below 50% in all of those areas. So that just shows you this absolutely needs to be addressed. Okay, those are big ticket upcoming items. Those are a whole variety of things we're working on. And we have a legislative package we're working on, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Hopefully you'll be hearing more from me soon. Some of them impact you all, ways to improve and make things better. But that's in the works, and next time I chat with you, I'll hopefully have a whole list of things to tell you about that we're working on to improve and make things better for you and for us and for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Do we have time for a question, Jim, or are we good? Probably not. All right, very good. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening this morning. God bless you in the work that you're doing. We are only as good as our leadership in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and your counties are only as good as you are. So you're making everything better where you are. Thank you for the work you do. God bless you. Keep it up.